Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Storytelling Alchemist show. We are now coming out very close to being 1 year back on the air here on the Los Angeles Tribune. And so it's been quite an amazing ride over the last year. Not quite a year, we're about a month away, but I mean, I was just thinking about that the other day about how relaunching the show has been very much a blessing, and the amount of amazing content and speakers and people we've had on the show to help people out. And today is not going to be any different. I have a gentleman coming on the show today that I've interviewed before a few years ago, and he has an incredible, touching story and a very healing story as well. I'm going to just bring on Joe McQuillen here in just a second. But basically, we're going to be talking about this book, We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side. And he wrote another book, and it's actually on my bookshelf out of my living room, but I'm not going to go run out there and grab it really quick. But basically, this is him working with his son that is on the other side. And so it's quite an incredible story, and we're going to bring him on so we can talk about that and the work that he's doing. Joe, how's it going?
Great, Jeremy. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks for letting me be on a show with such august authors and speakers. Yeah, I can say that because I'm a published author. If somebody else said that, it would be pretentious, but it's okay if I do it.
Well, I'm glad to have you, and I think it's the work you're doing is incredible, especially since there's a lot of people out there that have lost their children, and not everybody gets the opportunity to work with their children on the other side like you have. And you mentioned actually at some point where somebody asked you, does the pain ever go away? And you said, well, no, when anybody that says they have has never lost a child.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of healing energy in there. So the first book, the first question I kind of want to ask you, and I know I asked you probably this a couple of years ago, but I'm going to ask you again. Did you ever think that you would ever be speaking to a person on the other side in heaven? My search for Christopher. Did you ever think you'd be doing that and writing about it?
God, no, Jeremy. I mean, I think I believed in the other side or heaven or whatever you wanted to call it, and I think I believed that we went somewhere, but I was kind of preoccupied with my own world and didn't think much about the next step, which isn't really surprising. And so I assumed that my parents and my siblings who had passed on had gone somewhere, but I had really no idea and never that much interest in it. And so, people say, were you a skeptic? And I would say I just wasn't interested. It just didn't cross my path. So that's all changed since January 3rd, 2016. And this has been my path.
So is your 2016 and your son transitioning, is that what started you down the metaphysical, spiritual, or this path, or were you on that before? Or?
Well, I'll tell you, take a look at me. I've got a brush cut and a broken nose, and I've got candles, and I've got some sage burning, and I aligned my chakras before you and I started talking. Do I look like a guy that would do all that? So, but I am. And so, as I said, I believed in it. And 16 years before Christopher drowned, I had on a whim or a lark, or at least what I thought was, it turns out it was probably something I was meant to do, met with a medium. And I had no real sense of urgency. My dad and mom were gone, but they were at a time when mid 70s was normal for people to go, and I had a couple siblings that crossed over, but nothing. There was no sense of urgency. But I saw her, and after this reading that was just fine, but not exactly enlightening. She looked at me and she said, "Your dad's here, and he's telling you railroad, and he's holding a caboose." Now, if you look over on the top of that dresser, right behind where the bookshelf, there's a railroad lantern there, because my dad spent 40 years on the railroad. All 5 boys, there were 5 of us, 10 kids, 5 boys, worked on the railroad during college. My uncle was a railroader. My grandfather was a railroader. We were a railroad family. So when she told me that, it got my attention. Now, the old man, he didn't give me, lottery numbers or the answers to the universe. But what he did give me was the information that he was somewhere. So, flash forward January 3rd, 2016, when I found out Christopher had drowned with 3 of his friends in a canoe accident at 3 o'clock in the morning. I knew that if my old man was somewhere, then Christopher was with him, and I needed to try to figure this out. And that started my search.
So how did it, well, I guess the next question is that, so through this search,
Yeah,
you found a connection with Christopher.
I did.
yeah.
I actually went back to that same medium. She had moved to Surprise, Arizona. And I saw her a couple of years ago. My son was working in spring training, so I went out for a little bit to see her, and she's a good gal. But right after Christopher had drowned, I'd called her because she had moved, and I had a couple sessions with her, and I got some very enlightening information, Jeremy. She told me things that I didn't know were fact until the coroner's report came out a couple weeks later. So it was very good, but I was greedy, and I wanted to look into the eyes of a medium who was talking to my son. And if this was real, I wanted to figure it out. It's kind of like one of the first books I read was Bob Olson's book. And Bob was an investigator from LA and his dad died, wanted to figure it out. And, I'm very, kind of boots on the ground mindset about it. And I did the same thing. Basically, if this was all hokey BS, I wanted to take it off the list and figure out what else I needed to do to take care of my broken heart. So I did. I ended up reaching out to this local. It was on Bob Olson's website. There was a local medium. I made an appointment. It was June 29th or June 30th, 2016, about 6 months after Christopher drowned. And I made an appointment with this guy. He had my first name, nothing else. And I'd pay him when I get there. And before I left the house, I took this bracelet right here. It's a leather bracelet that Chris gave me when he was 6, when we were in Disney World. I wore it that weekend, put it in my dresser, never thought of it again. For some reason, I got moved, put it on. And then I grabbed some shamrock seeds that I got from Amazon the night before. Now, my wife didn't even know I had these seeds. I don't hide anything from her. I wasn't hiding anything from her. But she, they came in the night before, and I hadn't gotten around to telling her. I had moved his grave over. We had buried him in January 8th, 2016 at a cold, windy, snowy day in the Midwest. And when the snow melted, he was buried next to another couple, and I was infuriated. So I did whatever even-tempered guy did. I would stomp around and raise some hell, and then wrote a check and moved him over one, and I'll occupy the one he was in. So this day, I went, and before I saw Andrew, I stopped at the grave, and I planted shamrock seeds in the loose dirt because they had just moved him over. And went on to see Andrew, and I walked into his office, and he said to me, "Christopher acknowledges that you guys celebrated something yesterday, which was Sally and my 25th wedding anniversary. We didn't celebrate it. We acknowledged it." He said your family on the other side celebrated it for you. He said, "Chris acknowledges you're wearing a bracelet he gave you, which was under a cuff." And he said, "Christopher acknowledges you were at his grave today planting something." Now, wow. That's the moment, Jeremy, I went from believing, because I started believing the minute, this Nancy Myers, the first medium, told me about Chris. I started believing it. But that moment, that first 15 minutes with Andrew Anderson, looking at my boy over my shoulder, I went from believing to knowing, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it's one of those things where, if they would have gotten some circumstantial evidence, it would have been one thing, but to get such detail,
right?
I mean, there's no way.
Right. So. I saw Andrew just recently. We had a barbecue pork chop dinner. He asked me to come out to a spirit group, and I'll go. I like one-on-ones. I'm not a big, group guys in this kind of environment, in the metaphysical, but they serve a purpose, just not my cup of tea. But I went, and there was a reason. 2 people were there that one traveled from Nebraska because his boy had died 6 months ago in a car accident, and he read my book, and I didn't even know I was supposed to be there that day, and I went. But Andrew and I had a meeting, a session beforehand, and he looked at me and he said, "You going to Bills game?" And the following week, I was flying home for a Buffalo Bills game. I grew up in Buffalo. And he said, "Chris says you're going to a Bills game." And it was the next week. Now, I wish he'd told me not to waste my time because they got blown away by Indianapolis that day, but that's another story. But those are the things that, I mean, you just can't pull out of thin air, that it's, and most of the time it's just validating. The interesting thing is, Jeremy, is that on the anniversary of course crossing, the very first anniversary is crossing, I'd seen a handful of mediums, a couple of mediums. I'd read a bunch of research, read a bunch of books. And on the anniversary, so January 3rd, 2017, I started coming in here. This office was his bedroom. And so I think his spirit moves very, very freely here. So it's a thin place for me. It's where the veil is very thin here. And it's thin for me in a few other places. But I came in here and started meditating, chakras, did all the things I did before I talked to you. But I have the lights out other than the candles. And I started getting messages. I started writing them down. And he started describing what heaven was like, what the other side was like. He's never used the word. Actually, he did say, he said to me, "It's like heaven." Then he laughed and said, "I'm just kidding you. It is heaven." So he tends to bust my stones the same way he did when he was here. He's still, one time I asked Andrew, I said, "Ask him if I ever came up short." And he said, "Chris is laughing," and said, "God, no, you never came up short, Pop. You are short, but you never came up short." So and then he said, "He's laughing at your haircut." So on that first anniversary, I started writing down these messages. And I to this day, 2 or 3 times a month, I'll get woken in my sleep at 3 a.m. I'll come in here and I'll get 2 or 3 pages of downloads from my boy explaining life, sometimes pushing me to finish books or to help other people, which I think his biggest message is 2 things. That, I got to help other parents to realize their kids aren't gone. They're accessible. And they are still right here, and so for me, I get this amazing gift, but I got to give it away to keep it, Jeremy, and that's what I'm doing.
So that's incredible, because I think about, parents that have lost their children in many, many different ways. My mother used to say one of the hardest things for a parent ever is to lose a child. And that's almost, she of course went before me. She said, but imagine.
As she should.
Imagine. She said a parent should never have to go, our child should never go before a parent. So
right. It is, there was a line from a wonderful, very heartbreaking movie called Manchester by the Sea, where the woman lost some kids, and she said that my heart was broken, it'll always be broken. And that's the way it is. Doesn't mean I don't live a fulfilling life. I do. I have a very fulfilling, I live a life beyond my wildest dreams, but I do it all with a little bit of my heart's broken, and it won't heal until, I cross that stream and I'm with Chris again, and you kind of you gather tools to deal with the grief, and you kind of adjust that that's just your soulmate. Grief's going to be with you forever, but what do it happened. You can't unring this bell of January 3rd, 2016, but what are you going to do about it? Right. People say it's not fair. And I say, fair is where you go to ride the merry-go-round and eat cotton candy. Fair don't fit into it, Yeah.
Do you think that there was predetermined that him going over by the soul, like people believe in soul contracts and stuff like that?
I do believe in soul contracts. I don't believe in predestination. I don't think that God moves us around like chess pieces. There's another great line from the book, The Shack, where God said to a father who had lost a daughter, "Just because I work incredible good out of unspeakable tragedies doesn't mean I orchestrate the tragedies." So I don't think God moves us around like chess pieces. I think we've signed contracts, and I think we have exit points. And from what I found in research, the third one's always, you're out of hall passes for the third one. Why? I have no idea. I certainly don't know all the rules, and Chris keeps telling me, and you'll read it in the second book, he'll say, you're no expert, Pop. You're just a messenger. He wants to keep me, humbly in place, And so I believe in soul contracts. I believe that Chris picked us as parents, and I believe he was destined to leave early. I've been told if he didn't live on this one, he would have gone the next year. So I don't know if that's because life was going to get very hard for him going forward. I don't have any of those answers. All I know is about the journey that I've been on for going on 6 years, and the research I've done, and the connection I've done, and the soul connections I've had with Chris, who I believe is a twin flame for me, with me.
That makes sense. It's interesting because I've always believed in the soul has exit points, and I think we talked about the last time you were on the show that my mother had a heart attack in 2009, had a near-death experience, came back, and then actually transitioned it again in 2012, and that was a time where she told me, she goes, "I'm ready."
Yeah, my sister Marcia, my sister Marcia was ready. She was Christopher's godmother. And she was a big source of love for me, very much like a mom, Jeremy, in a lot of ways. And cancer had gotten its arms around her. And Chris said, "Dad, the minute Marcia crosses, I'll be there." And two things about that is I was with her a couple of weeks before she transitioned. And she said to me, "Honey, I want to tell you something. You gave me the greatest gift. I read your book and I'm not afraid to die."
Oh.
On the following January, on my birthday, I always go to a medium on my birthday. I went to a medium and she said, "Your son's here, but there's another woman here, very pretty, glasses, has title of mother, sister, aunt, godmother." I said, "It's Marcia." She said to tell you, "Honey, thanks for the greatest gift." When she transitioned, Chris said to me, and I'm not this smart to try to figure this out without somebody telling me this. He said, "Pop," or Dad, because it was serious. He calls me Pop when he's playing and Dad when it's serious. He said, "When Marcia crossed over, we were all there. Jerry, Billy, Bobby, Pat. These are all the siblings that she had so missed. And she was with us, but then she had to go somewhere like a spa. And when she came back, she was younger than when I was a kid. So it took me a little bit to figure what he was telling me was that even though the cancer stayed with her on this side, with her body, Jeremy, the trauma crossed with her. So she had to go somewhere. And I love how what woman doesn't want to go to a spa, right? Like a spa. She went to a spa. And when she came back, she was cleansed of that. And it's like, holy cow, we go through this, spa, car wash, cleansing that frees us of all the gunk that traveled with our soul across, And like I said, those are the reasons, it's just not me making up things to put a salve on my broken heart, because I had never imagined anything like that. It was just so amazing.
That's talked about countless times in research of people that study near-death experiences or other people that have done mediumship and looked at different stuff. And so, you coming into this and having such evidential stuff, there's that's one of the things that mediums, of course, have to do in the beginning of a reading, is because they have to give a lot of evidential stuff in order to show that this is not some joke, it's the truth. And then there's always going to, that was the next question, is how do you handle the naysayers? But
I don't care. Jeremy, I'm the youngest of 10 kids, right? A crazy family, kind of two families melded together after a car wreck. And we moved to the suburbs and the neighbors hated us, we had dogs and bicycles and touch football games would break out on people's lawns. I'd have hated us if I was a neighbor. So, so I grew up not really caring what anybody outside the tribe thought. Somebody wrote, and I keep it on my wall. It says, "The unassailable self-confidence that comes from a childhood insulated with love." I was loved, right? So the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of people that don't buy into this. That's fine. Change the channel. Go watch sports radio. Do whatever it is you want to do. But if you're a parent who lost a kid, that's who I care about. If you're a parent that thinks, the connection with that child that you gave birth to is gone forever, that's who I want to reach and heal and help. And like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm not a medium. I'm just a guy walking this path, It's his parade, like I told you. I just carry a tuba.
Well, you handle it kind of like I do. I mean, like you can't prove to somebody your experience,
Right.
and
Yeah. But I have had people say to me, I read your book, and if it was anybody else, I wouldn't believe it, But because you're telling me this, I believe it. And I get that. I get that. Why would I, all I want to do is carry the message, carry Christopher's message. And if it's not for you, fine. Maybe, it was one kind of a big time radio jock here in Illinois, in Chicago, that interviewed. And after it was over, he was a naysayer, but he was pretty interested after the interview was over. And I said, look, just take the info you got and put it in your pocket. Someday you may need it. And if you do, reach out to me. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. And I hope someday when he needs that connection that he remembers to reach out and give me a call.
Good. So, what's the difference between the first book and the second book? And I know you're working on the third book.
Yeah. You know what? I had no idea I was writing the first book, much less, I assumed that all the notes I was keeping, all the medium sessions I was writing down, everything that I was recording, that I was just going to sit on a rocking chair, in my older age, and read, listen, feel better about where I'm going. But that wasn't, what Christopher's plan was. And so after the first book, I was feeling a little blue that, it was exciting to be accomplishing this and putting this out in the world. But I was a little blue that we weren't going to continue this. He was there with every keystroke, every paragraph, every experience. And that's when he came through and said, we're not done yet, Pop. We're going to do this until you cross over. So the difference of the first book was a journey. Same thing. There's chronological visits from him, and medium visits are all chronological. And it really was the journey, kind of an awakening, an emergence of it. And the second book, there's a lot more stories, and I think a lot more. I think what I'm supposed to do in the second book, or what I did in the second book, was give parents permission to heal and tell them what, kind of what's going to happen on their path. The first time they walk in the door and they see a pair of Timberland boots open, empty like I did, and thought, oh, great, Chris is home, and then I realized he wasn't home. He's not on this side anymore. They were his little brother's boots. So, I just wanted to explain to parents that that's going to happen, and go sit on the deck, cry, which is what I did, do what you got to do. Grieving is a messy business. You got to let the tsunami take you. And you did it with, your ma, Jeremy, and then you let it go back out, and then you finish your day. But I just want to give parents permission, especially dads who think they're supposed to suck this stuff up, man.
Yeah, of course.
It's okay to feel. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to be, to admit your heart's broken. There's who would have thought that I'm going to recite something from Haruki Murakami? Once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain: when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what storms are all about. All of us who've been through this have been in this storm, and it always stays with you, but it'll pass. And for me, I'm a different guy than I was January 3rd, 2016. I'm actually a better guy, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes down to the old saying that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the emotions, but it does come back around, even for parents that pass away. Yeah. Every once in a while, her number will pop up on my phone.
Yeah. You know what? The tsunami pain passes, but the connection's there, and it'll always be there. And that connection comes with pain. It's called grief. I don't want to lose that connection. I had a healer walk up and said, "Are you ready to let this go?" I said, "No, take off, scram. I don't want to let this go."
And I think I just saw something recently about. It was funny. I won't go into all the details, but people try to avoid pain. Or they try to brush pain under the rug, or they try to, pain can be our driver. Now, healing is a part of accepting it, and moving on to a certain extent, I think. But it's the pain does come back up.
That's really well said. That really, it's a, the pain's a motivator. I mean, I wouldn't be helping other people if I didn't experience the pain that I did. Now, I will tell you, it's a bad trait. I'd rather, instead of talking to you, I'd rather be watching a hockey game with my kid having a pizza. But like I said earlier, you can't unring that bell. That happened. And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. So where can they find the book? I'm assuming on Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon.com, Joe McQuillen. I have a website, joemcquillen.net. Amazon's got both books, Kindle and paperback. The first one's got Audible. The second one, we're working on an Audible. It's coming. My email is my initials, J as in Joseph, B as in boy, my last name, McQuillen @gmail. You're a parent. I just did an interview and a guy was just beside himself and needed to talk and wrote me an email. We went back and forth. I mean, the bottom line is, he wanted to know if how to connect and give me the lineup, including, doing it. Yeah, I sent him a guided meditation with this wonderful medium that I like, and that's the stuff. I'm supposed to share this stuff. I'm not supposed to hoard it like a treasure,
Yeah. Good stuff. So any last minute things to give the listeners or the viewers?
Yeah. Susan Geisman's a brilliant author. And she's a medium author who used to be the assistant to assistant to the Joint Chief of Staff. What a straight arrow she is. And now she's a world famous medium. And she wrote a book called Still Right Here. And I steal that line when I autograph books often. And I'll say, your kids are still right here, So, but you can't sit back and say, gee, nobody contacted me. It's like, gee, I haven't heard from you got to do your job. You got to do your work, research a little bit. My books give you some pretty good how-to stuff from a blue collar guy, boots on the ground, and there's other ones. So do a little research, do a little work and do your best because they're trying to connect. Most kids are trying to connect with their parents. Most loved ones are trying to connect with you. So, get your hands dirty and try to figure it out. Need a little guidance, send me an email.
Very perfect. Well, thank you, Joe. And everybody just to let everybody know that Joe is my final interview for the year.
Hi, Happy New Year, buddy.
This season. And we'll have I've already started working on great guests for 2022. I can't believe it's 2022. So,
me too.
With all that being said, everybody, you can check out the past episodes on Roku TV at LA Tribune TV. So definitely check it out. And much love, everybody.
Much love.